Roll Tide, and welcome to Crimson Tide Rewind, live from Baumhower's Victory Grille in Vestavia Hills, presented by the Alabama Department of Public Health, who reminds Alabama, don't wait, vaccinate. Roll Tide, everyone. This is Roger Hoover. Glad to welcome you to the show alongside former Crimson Tide linebacker Cory Reamer. And Cory, Roll Tide, great to talk after an Alabama very impressive win against LSU on Saturday.
Yeah, you definitely can't draw it up any better than going to Baton Rouge and walking away with that kind of a victory. You take the wind out of the sails pretty early. You know, you first play of the game, you get the false start. You're not sure how things are going. I'm sure the decibel level down in the stadium was incredibly high at that point. But I think playing at Tennessee earlier in this season really helped this team be able to handle the adversity, and it didn't bother them. They go out there and find a way to win. And I mean, probably the best, most complete game that we've seen from this team so far this season. Offense, defense, all around was a phenomenal game, and you couldn't start peaking at a better time throughout the season. Obviously, LSU, we knew they had some weaknesses. We talked about it right before, a couple weeks before this game, right before the bye week of they've not handled running quarterbacks very well, and you didn't know if Alabama was going to try to go in and get too creative, but they didn't. They gave the ball to number 4, who looked healthy. He looked incredible this weekend. Played, obviously, one of his best games as well. He went out there and executed extremely well. The ball was coming out of his hand a lot cleaner, more crisp, on target than we've seen over the last couple weeks. I thought it was a huge week of improvement that we, the middle part of the season, October was rough. You come out of October with 2 losses, but you find a way to shut out Missouri, hang 36 points on them, and then you go to Baton Rouge against the top 20 ranked team and absolutely demoralize them.
And for this defense, and that's now back-to-back games against SEC opponents, you have not allowed a touchdown for the first unit officially. The second team did allow a touchdown late, but
we didn't bring the starters back in at the end of that game to prevent that last touchdown. But no, it was an incredible performance by the defense for sure.
Yeah, just again, it kind of felt once again like Alabama football, and that's what fans have been clamoring for the last few weeks.
Yeah, I think that early on we saw this offense was really carrying this team. It was big play after big play. Didn't really have a ton of it was 2-3 plays, get touchdowns off the field. Defense goes out, gets a stop. And then during the middle part of the season, it was it didn't seem like we were bringing that physicality that we're used to seeing from this Alabama team. Defense is trying to figure out how to get some stops. Allowing a lot of points being scored. Offense kind of slows down, and you saw through that middle part of that season where, if the offense isn't scoring 40-something points, we were in for a dogfight because the defense really couldn't get stops. And these last 2 weeks, holding some of these offenses that we faced, albeit it was, Missouri, who was a little bit banged up, and LSU doesn't have a phenomenal offense, but you cannot take away from what this defense was able to go do on the road in the SEC at night. It's not a feat that you have to just look over because, this LSU offense isn't as good as they've been in the past. They've still been able to put points up on good teams so far this season. So you feel like this defense is riding a momentum wave, and they're feeling comfortable in what the game plan is. And I think this coaching staff has figured out really how to grow from the beginning of the season. They know what to go out there and call, and these guys are playing fast on the defensive side of the ball. They're playing quick. They seem like they understand the concepts. Everything's starting to somewhat come together. I remember the first year that Coach Saban got there, even though we had a little bit more time, it wasn't much more time than what this staff had with us. And it took almost the entire summer and into the first few games of starting to kind of understand these calls, how it's supposed to look, what the coaches are trying to do when they're calling certain plays. And I think that you heard Coach DeBoer talking about it after the game is these guys are starting to come together. This team's starting to come together. There's been a lot of growth throughout this season. We as fans over the last, 15, 16 years having to have that change again where we've got a new staff and new players and new schemes. You don't realize how much time and repetition it takes for you to get comfortable as a team, but they're starting to kind of look like they're making that transition pretty nicely here towards the end.
42-13 was the final score for Alabama against LSU. An impressive victory on Saturday down in Baton Rouge. And for the next hour, we're going to talk all about the game, and we really invite your phone calls to join us. Give us a call at 877-202-BAMA. That's 877-202-2262. That's the number to dial. As we're with you tonight from Baumhower's in Vestavia Hills, this is Crimson Tide Rewind, and this is Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
the furthest of the three wideouts on that side of the formation. Handoff, no. Keeping it himself, Milroe, 30, 25-foot race, 15, 10, 5. Touchdown, Alabama! Jalen Milroe, 39 yards, and Bama gets on the board first.
First of 4 touchdowns for Jalen Milroe against the LSU Tigers this past Saturday at Tiger Stadium. Keep up with everything Alabama with the Alabama Crimson Tide mobile app presented by Cadence Bank. It's available at the App Store and Google Play. Download the Alabama Crimson Tide mobile app now for free. Again, tonight we want to take your phone calls, and we will go to the phone lines first. Again, our number 877-202-BAMA. And we first go to our good friend in Birmingham who joins us now. Mike, you're on. Roll Tide, Mike.
Let's go. Roll Tide indeed. Bama back in business. They had to remind themselves they are the defending Southeast Conference champions. They are the beast of the Southeast. And it looked like the last Saturday night, Milroe, he cut through the bayou, did he not? Our defense was superb, shutting down that quarterback. He caused 3 turnovers. They supposed to have 3 turnovers, that quarterback. We shut him down, shut the whole offense down. LSU, we all 1 touchdown. Okay, hey, that was just a bigger role. Put our old battery was 4 years ago, we did 55-17. Bama's back on track for a playoff spot. 3 more wins away now for a playoff spot 10-3. Could have a shot for SC championship against Texas or Texas A&M. Hey, that was going to playoffs, guys. I can feel it, baby. Roll Tide all the way, guys. We got this. We back on track. We got it, baby. Roll Tide. Woo! And no problem. Yo, you acting so crazy, so the Bill Buck should be locked up in jail. Okay, guys.
Welcome back, Mike. We missed you a couple weeks ago. It's good to hear from you, man. It's amazing how fast the transition that we had from a couple weeks ago of, Alabama's really got to fight tooth and nail to try to find a way to get in the playoff. Now, if you read all this stuff that's out there, there's an opportunity that they could somehow end up in Atlanta. Now, do we want it or not? I'm not really sure. You obviously always want to go to the SEC championship. I still can't get around some of this conversation where it's saying, it might be best if you don't go to the SEC championship, but I still think it carries a lot of weight, and players really want to go compete for that title in Atlanta. It still has a lot of meaning. Maybe that changes down the road. I don't know, but now it looks like, Alabama's back in the driver's seat. Came out today with an AP number 9. They're clearly it's back in their hands, and that's what you want to have. The fate, they determine their own fate. They got 3 games left in the regular season. You go out there, you've got to win all of them, but nothing. That part of it hasn't changed. You cannot afford a loss, even though you've moved up in the rankings. Everybody's seen you. Probably looks like one of the best college football teams that's out there right now after this performance on Saturday. A lot of people are talking really highly about you. Now you got to turn around and you got Mercer, Oklahoma, and Auburn. No, some of those games, according to what those other teams have done so far, gives you a reason to overlook. But Mercer, we talked about pregame, this is a 9-1 Mercer team. Obviously, it's a different level of competition, but you cannot fall asleep for the rest of the season because one more loss, and it securely puts you out of the playoffs.
Can you tell fans about how Coach Saban would have you ready to go for this particular game, that final non-conference game in November?
I mean, this would be the worst week of practice that you could imagine. I mean, this is, everybody's talking good about you. Everybody's talking about how, good Jalen is, how well you played. He knows that you've got a team that you're probably going to fall asleep watching film during. I mean, you couldn't pay me to go. If you had to pick a week of practice to go back for, this would be the week that I would not want to go back for in terms of being a player, because these practices would have been absolutely incredible. It would have been awful. We'd have started periods over. We would have been he'd have been screaming for 4 straight days. Like this, that was the way that he did it. Was he knows what you're hearing out there from all this outside noise, and he knows what the opponent is on Saturday, and he would be drilling it in you that you cannot focus on who those guys are on the other sideline. This would have been a tough one. I'm glad that I don't know how DeBoer's going to handle it, but I imagine. The maturity level of this team seems to be growing, but you still have a lot of younger guys who have not been around a lot of football. And Tyler Booker said it earlier today, he realizes now he's that senior leadership. He's trying to change his role. He's trying to become that guy because we've got so many young guys that are in the starting 22, the 44, and they haven't had to deal with this type of a game. We saw what happened after a big win against Georgia. The very next week you get Vanderbilt. So after a bye week, it's like you got to be prepared to play whoever it is, because any team can beat you, and not only this week, but you've got the following 2 weeks against 2 quality SEC opponents, and we all know what that last game means and how you can throw the records out the window when it comes down to it.
The Mercer Bears are up next after Alabama picks up a win against LSU, 42-13, the final score from Baton Rouge. Again, we invite your phone calls, 877-202-BAMA. This is Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield. Touchdown, Justice Haynes. Great to see that on Saturday against LSU. J&J Apparel, your trusted source for Bama gear. New Alabama hats, T-shirts, polos are arriving daily. Visit online at jnjapparel.net. You can also shop their retail store at 1926 University Boulevard in downtown Tuscaloosa. RTR with J&J. Here on Crimson Tide Rewind, we'll go right back to the phones. We go down to Pace, Florida, where Parker joins us now. Roll Tide, Parker.
Roll Tide, Roger and Cory. How are y'all doing tonight?
Good, man. It was great to see you win, wasn't it?
It was, and something kind of cool coming up with this game this week against Mercer. One of their kickers, Reese Griffin, I don't know if y'all have a stat sheet in front of y'all, but he kicked for my high school at Pace High School a couple of years ago.
Oh, good deal, man. That's great. You got something, a little bit of connection on the other team.
Yeah, but I'm rooting for the Pace guy just because it's a Pace, Florida guy. But I still think we got it. But great win in Baton Rouge, and we got to just take it one game at a time, y'all. But listening, to Chris calling that Alabama basketball game right now. So let's get a win tonight, and let's get a win on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like you said, it's one game at a time. It's kind of become what this team has to focus on. They don't have another choice. We hit it on the last segment of this is now a season where you have to win every single week. You've got to focus on the next win, and nothing's more important than getting this one. Because you don't want to be the team at the end of the season and you've kind of tripped over your own feet. You didn't take care of business against these games that you obviously have an advantage going into those, but if you don't respect your opponent and somehow you find yourself in the fourth quarter fighting for trying to get a win, you can't afford it anymore. You've got 2 on your record. There's a lot of those teams that are out there that have 2 losses, and there has been some of the other games that we saw this weekend. Miami loses to Georgia Tech, but you don't want to be relying on carnage to happen above you for you to find a way in to this playoff, because there's good teams that are out there that are going to find a way to get some wins. And the biggest thing you can do, the easiest thing for this team is to go out there and win these last 3 games. Those are the things that you can control. That was always Coach Saban's message to us. We can't worry about what else is going on. What we can control is how we play and execute every single Saturday, no matter who we're playing. Let's ride this momentum of we're seeing improvement throughout this year. And we want to continue to improve towards the end of the season, because then it becomes, if you get a chance to make it to the playoff, you're going to have some really tough tests ahead of you. And, all these other teams that are getting tired, having some injuries, you don't want to fall into that category of you've lost your touch. You want to be hitting your stride right at the right moment. And hopefully we're going to continue to do that on Saturday.
Saturday, it will be Alabama against Mercer. If you're coming to Tuscaloosa for the game, make sure you join us at Vector Security Champions Lane. It is the best pregame fan fest in the country. Music will start on stage at 9 a.m., followed by our pregame radio broadcast live on stage at 10. We'll also have the early games on the largest outdoor LED screens in Tuscaloosa. Plus, we'll have some autograph signings, food trucks, and, of course, ice-cold beer in Legends Lounge, where there's never a cover charge. Visit championslane.com each week for more details. We'll continue on Crimson Tide Rewind. If you'd like to join us, give us a call at 877-202-BAMA. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
8 points behind. Play action. Nussmeier forced to scramble. Pressure coming. Ball's on the deck. Bama's fighting for it. Bama's got it. A takeaway for the Tide. Picking it up for Alabama. Tim Smith after the fumble was forced by Jahad Campbell.
Hey, if you'd like to join our show tonight, you can also submit your question to us on the Alabama Media Group Twitter line at UA_CTSN. Brought to you by AL.com, your source for SEC sports. And Cory, that highlight we just heard, that might have been my favorite play of the night. Jahad Campbell with a very tough hit, forcing the fumble, and, of course, Tim Smith right there to pick it up. But Jahad Campbell's playing a very high level of football.
Yeah, I think what we're getting from both of our inside backers, and Jahad Campbell and Deontay Lawson are playing at an extremely high level. You know, this defense just felt like they were playing, not only this offense playing downhill, but this defense was just playing downhill, bringing the physicality to this team. You know, we've talked about it on this show earlier in the year it seemed like we were just catching, you know, from a tackling standpoint. We were not the ones that were delivering the hits and being the aggressor, and this defense seems to be turning it around. They're comfortable out there. They're getting after it. But Deontay Lawson had a phenomenal game. Jahad Campbell, those guys are I thought Kane Womack's game plan going in for this one was absolutely phenomenal. Go out there and puts a lot of pressure on Garrett Nussmeier. You know, the conditions of the game, with it being so wet, you know, he's had a tendency to turn the ball over a bunch throughout this season. He's a good quarterback. I think if you look at any of the NFL scouting reports, what they say about this guy is that he's got phenomenal zip on the football. He's got all the qualities that can make him probably one of those like Chase Daniel. If you remember that from Missouri, he plays in the league for 10, 15 years because he's got all the intent, you know, the qualities that you want out of a quarterback. But, you know, for this year, for LSU, he's out there, he's turning the ball over a bunch. And we knew going into this, if we could put some pressure on him, get in his face, he's going to throw us the football. And we caused a number of strip sacks, a number of fumbles, some interceptions, and it was just a phenomenal game plan, I thought, and everybody executed it very well. There was, you know, not many mistakes that I saw from the defensive side of the ball that we've seen throughout this season. It didn't seem like we were making the same mistakes, and we went out there and executed against an LSU offense that's, you know, towards the back end in terms of rankings of what their output is. But, you know, we've seen it before already throughout this season. We've played teams that have not had great offenses, but we've given them confidence to stay in these ball games. And the last thing you want to do is when you go on the road is give them a reason to believe that they can go out there and execute. Well, we took it away, and there was moments where LSU had opportunities to go out there and gain some momentum, and then we go out there and create turnovers, whether it be the strip sack fumble, or the interception on the 5-yard line. You know, there's a lot of opportunities. This defense kind of were in that bend but don't break. They were playing extremely well, but allowed some drives to continue, especially early on. It looked like LSU was moving the ball at will, and then you hold them to a field goal. Yep. Massive win for this defense, especially in the way these offenses in college football play today.
Really cool to see that. And even Alabama's coordinators, Kane Womack's always on the field, but I love, too, that Nick Sheridan got to come down from the press box early. Alabama fans salute him on the way back to the sideline. That's a pretty cool moment for the
it is.
Staff.
I mean, those guys, they're working their tail off. And, you know, as fans, we're criticizing them, and we're wondering what's going on. You got 2 losses. Things don't look the way that we're used to seeing this Alabama team look. You're losing to teams that you've not lost to in 40 years. A lot of criticism is flying their way, and it's incredible for them to have that moment, because they obviously know that they believe in their system. They believe in what they do. They've been successful in a lot of different places. For them to have that moment, and it takes a little bit of pressure off those guys where they can enjoy it. You know, it's great to see for this coaching staff. And you heard Coach DeBoer talking about, I think it was at his press conference today, is we're finally seeing our values and what we want to do and instill in this team. They're starting to show in a product that we're putting out there on the field. It's as a coordinator that's out there calling this game, you know that those guys were excited to be able to celebrate how these guys played on Saturday.
Fun at Tiger Stadium. We're having fun tonight at Baumhower's Victory Grille. Baumhower certainly understands that times are tough, especially at this time of the year. Their Santa Specials menu is here to make your wallet happy. Featuring items starting at just $7.99, like their 1/3 ounce custom grind Omaha beef tailgate burger, curly Q fries, and a free beverage for only $8.99. Baumhower's legendary fun, legendary food, and legendary value. We'll be back with more in just a moment. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
They'll put Taylor offset to the right side. 2 wideouts to the right of him. They'll roll Nussmeier right. Fires. It's picked off. Interception in the end zone. That's a touchback. Great job, Deontay Lawson. Bama turns him away. Lawson brought in the pick, and the Tide turns away LSU again.
and a takeaway by the Swarm D of the Alabama Crimson Tide. You can also submit your questions to us tonight on the Alabama Media Group Twitter line at UA_CTSN, brought to you by AL.com, your source for SEC sports. Tide rolling to victory against LSU, 42-13. Final score this past Saturday as Alabama, again, firmly in the thick of not just, Cory, the college football playoff race. We'll learn the new rankings from the College Football Playoff Committee coming up tomorrow, but now it's starting to become a little more clearly in the picture. Alabama has a path to Atlanta for the SEC championship game.
Yeah, they do. It's just wild to think about after losing those two games. But you knew with this conference and all the way, everything, college football is changing before our eyes. You know, there's a lot of good teams that are out there. Between the top 6 or 7 teams in this conference alone, anybody can absolutely lose at any point in time. You've got the schedule pulled up and where the standings are at this point in time. You know that Tennessee's sitting there at the top, and who they play this weekend?
Georgia.
Yeah, and you know somebody's got to come out of that one. It's going to be crazy to look at Georgia with Kirby Smart, how fast things have changed for that team even. And they're a team that was able to retain a lot of their roster, and they're still, a lot of good players. But the parity that happens across this conference, across college football, you're seeing a lot of teams. Indiana picking up, Kurt Cignetti going out there and picking up 40-plus players out of the portal. Now he's got them in the AP poll. We'll see what the committee says tomorrow night. But they're a top, 5 team at this point. Who would have ever imagined that Indiana's going to be in the hunt for a playoff spot? And, the odds look like they're pretty good. Even with a loss, I think with their schedule, it's like Ohio State next weekend, and that's probably the biggest game that's on their schedule. But they're playing good football. Anything can happen in college football, especially in this conference. You're seeing a lot of good quality teams. Ole Miss goes out there and looks dominant against Georgia, even when they had Jackson Dart going down with an injury early on in that game, putting in the backup and finding ways to score points on that drive where he had to go in there and play. But they're a team with 2 losses. They've lost a couple games. Everybody seems to have some losses, and there's definitely some games that are left where there's going to be, more. Georgia looked absolutely dominant against Texas, who is one of the best teams in the country. It's amazing how hard it's been this year for a lot of teams to be able to put 2 quarters, 2 halves of football together. You look at Alabama, the first half against Georgia, and then what they look like on Saturday. If they played like that the entire season, they'd be undefeated and easily be one of the best. But nobody's doing it. It's really, really hard because you're playing a lot of teams that now have picked up a lot of talent through the portal and through NIL and all these other things. It's just it's fun to watch because it makes the product, pretty interesting. And every single week, that there's going to be some upsets. And we saw some this weekend. Miami's been flirting with losing all season long. And then Brent Keys go out there and his Georgia Tech team goes and upsets them this weekend. It's going to make a really fun November leading into this college football playoff because that it's not over with. These upsets are not – they're far – they're definitely not over with for a long shot. There's going to be some big upsets happening for the rest of this year.
And I think that's the whole point of the college football playoff, going to 12 teams, because there were those years where it felt like, okay, Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Clemson, just Ohio State feel inevitable.
Right.
That's going to be your group at the end of the year. Now we're sitting here on November 11th, and there are so many possibilities, first of all, even for the SEC championship. Now the divisions have gone away, but then the playoff after that.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much opportunity. It's crazy to think that the SEC is regarded as one of the big conferences, the best conferences in the college football right now. And we're kind of just beating up ourselves a little bit because there's so many good teams. And the biggest thing is the movement up from the bottom. All these teams that have been able to pick up a few players here and there that have just made a difference in their season. They're able to go out there and compete. Not only do you have the top 7 that are, you consider them, they're always good, but that 8, 9, 10 team right there can compete with most teams on any given Saturday. So it does. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think maybe people got tired of seeing the same 4 teams that were always in the hunt. They had the best rosters. They recruited the best. They were the top 4 in different orders every single year in recruiting classes. Now you're seeing a lot of that spread out. NIL and the transfer portal is not, they're, for all that it gets, everybody hammers on it for being a bad thing. It has made this product really good, but if you're one of those, like us, that are used to being the top dog and everything, you got to appreciate what this coaching staff has continued to do to get us back in the hunt when it seemed like things were kind of falling apart.
One quick update from Coleman Coliseum. Just under 4 minutes to go in men's basketball. Second-ranked Alabama with a 31-24 lead against McNeese. So hopefully Nate Oates and the Crimson Tide can keep it rolling. And invite all of you that are listening to this show once we're done at 7 p.m. Central. Just find your local CTSN basketball affiliate to hear Chris Stewart, Tom Stipe, and Brian Passink call all the action from Tuscaloosa, Alabama against McNeese in men's basketball. This show brought to you by the Alabama Department of Public Health, who reminds Alabama, don't wait, vaccinate. Back with more in a moment. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
3rd and 9 from their own 28-yard line, leading 28-6 as we begin the fourth quarter of play. Josh Cuevas in the ball game for Alabama. He is split wide of the near side of the field. Milroe, quarterback draw, has room 30, 35, 40, foot race across midfield, 30, 20, 10, good night, touchdown Alabama. 72 yards, and Jalen Milroe sends a good bit of the 102,000 that were here at kickoff for the exits.
That is how you start the fourth quarter, ladies and gentlemen. This season, make sure you stay cool when you purchase a limited edition Alabama Yeti. These custom Yeti cups only available at Champions Lane. Before home games, visit championslane.com to learn how to purchase yours. Elevate your game day with an Alabama Yeti. And we've talked about it some, Cory, but we got to dive in on Jalen Milroe this segment. 12 carries, 185 yards, 4 touchdowns. He also had 4 rushing touchdowns against LSU last season. And in a year where there's no clear-cut Heisman Trophy favorite, he might have just had a Heisman Trophy moment on Saturday.
Yeah, he's definitely, after we had a couple losses, it was, he was the leading front runner, especially after that first half of the Georgia game. Everybody, the odds changed immediately that he was the favorite to win the Heisman after the way he performed. But, since then we've had some down performances. But what we saw on Saturday from him, that week off, it just seemed it did everything for the entire team. It did everything for him. He looked healthy. He looked like he was running. After we saw him in Tennessee, I can't remember how many attempts that he had. I think it was like 15 rushing attempts for 11 yards, something like that. His, unbelievable. It was terrible. But what we saw from him on Saturday was, I've got the Alabama basketball finally starting to pull away from McNeese over here. What we saw from him on Saturday, he was running downhill with the same type of, intensity that we saw from the beginning of the season. You could tell, I don't know what was going on these last few weeks, but you could tell he wasn't feeling, 100%. Maybe that was the case, but, LSU's defense, that we knew they had some issues with mobile quarterbacks, and we go into this game with a game plan of attacking it. I love the way that we had quarterback design runs all night. I think with the rain, it even emphasized more for us to go out there and be a running first team. And you get a little bit, we didn't even try to attempt the mesh. We talked about, we just snapped the ball to him. Running back becomes the fullback, and you're following those guys. But the formations that we had with 3 receivers with a nub tight end on the backside of getting most of LSU's defense running in the wrong direction, and then Jalen just takes off with the football. It was fun to watch and you saw we haven't seen him separate from the defenses the last couple of weeks. And on that run from that highlight that we just played, there was nobody that was catching him. And 75 yards later, he finds the end zone. He was feeling himself. I think he's definitely cemented himself. All the negative talk that we heard about him and what he can't do, obviously still has some things to work on, but he was hitting, screen passes. He was being accurate. It was just something that the last couple of weeks that we've seen him not be as clean as we saw on Saturday for sure.
Really good work by him. You mentioned the running backs were solid as well. I mean, their blocking was incredible right in front of them on some of those scores. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, the blocking was phenomenal. The offensive line did a great job of getting some push up front. That left side of that offensive line with Tyler Booker leading the charge is, if you're not trying to run behind them every single week, you're missing the boat, because those guys were creating holes for not only Jalen but for the running backs. But you look at, he had 180-something yards rushing, but we still ended up with over 300 yards rushing on the game. Justice Haynes, J.M. Miller just continuing to play well. we talk about Kendrick Law a lot, doing all those things that are extra, blocking downfield. But those guys on Saturday, they were really called upon. They weren't getting the ball as much, but they were going out there and being that lead blocker that really opened up a lot of holes for Jalen as well.
Part of a great night for the Crimson Tide against the LSU Tigers. We'll continue talking about what needs to happen next for Alabama starting on Saturday against Mercer when we return. You're listening to Crimson Tide Rewind live from Baumhower's Victory Grille in Vestavia Hills. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
4th and 5, Tigers have to go for it. Nussmeier looking to his right, dumps it off, catch is made, and not able to get there was Josh Williams. Bama turning away the Tigers on 4th down again.
Time to take a look at our prescription for success. It's presented by Payless Drugs. Payless Drugs, your locally owned family pharmacy with 4 locations in Birmingham. Payless can hand your prescriptions, over-the-counter solutions, and home delivery. Payless at mynewpharmacy.com. As we talked about, it's Alabama just trying to take care of business in non-conference play this weekend against a very good team in the Mercer Bears. What has to happen, Cory, for the Crimson Tide on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about it earlier, you can't fall asleep for this game. You got to be ready to go play. It's a 1 o'clock kick. You're coming off of a massive win. The good thing is that we put this game away early and emptied the stadium pretty, early in the fourth quarter. We're able to put in a lot of our backups and hopefully get those guys some rest. It wasn't one of those games that just goes all the way to the very end or requires overtime, which we've kind of grown accustomed to with this matchup usually. But this is one that you can't take off. You can't just go out there and wonder when you're going to get pulled from the game and the backups are going to come in and get their opportunities to play. You got to go out there and take care of business. Because this is another opportunity for us, like we said earlier, is to build on the momentum that we have, continue to go out there and execute, learn a lot from this week of practice because, this is going to transition for the rest of this season, and we still have a lot of football left to play. If we take care of business, there's a lot of football games left that we have to go out there and play if we were able to make it into the postseason, into the playoffs, and you got to continue to improve. Fine-tuning on the things that we have control over and executing to the highest ability, no matter who it is. You got to take advantage of it.
Well, we'll go back to the phones for one final call tonight. Let's go to Hartsville where Joe joins us now. Roll Tide, Joe.
Roll Tide, guys. Hey, we know we got to win out, guys, but what's the best formula for SEC teams to beat each other up for us to get in the playoffs?
Yeah, I think there's a number of different scenarios that are out there. There's a really good chance, what I was looking at today, that there is a 10-2 team out there in the SEC. If they, a team that finishes 10-2 that might get left out of this 12-team playoff. It's very possible. It's just crazy to think about for sure. But there's a number of different things that can happen where somebody like that gets left out. But I think if Alabama sitting where they sit right now, ranked number 9, if they take care of business and win these last 3 games, I don't think that team is going to be us. You got Georgia and Tennessee that are playing this weekend. Whoever loses that game if Tennessee loses, that's another potential 10-2 team. We can have a lot of them spread across, the top, 6 or 7 teams in this conference that are sitting with the same record. I've seen what the scenario looks like of going down, how do they determine who those teams are? It could get very interesting, and I don't have the time nor the brain power to try to figure out what all those different scenarios that could play out could potentially mean. But I know this: if we win these games, we're going to be in the playoff. It might not mean that we're in Atlanta, but I think there's still pretty good chances for that happening as well.
Absolutely, and I think maybe the one team that I would really say should be left out, Missouri. I know Eli Drinkwitz told Cole Kubelik in that post-game interview, we have a great path to play off, and they do at 7-2, but if Alabama's head-to-head with you, sorry, Alabama beat you 34-0.
Yeah, I mean, if you go out there and you've got to start selling at this part of the season that your team is deserving of a spot in the playoffs, I'm pretty sure the rest of the country has seen what the product is that you're putting out there, and they're not believing in it. You might have a decent record, but I shout out to our man Jerry back in studio, but I don't think Missouri is going to be one of those teams that is really going to have a chance to win one of those spots. They might be one of those teams that gets left out.
We'll see what happens. First up, it's Alabama against Mercer on Saturday. More on that when we return for our final segment of the night, Crimson Tide Rewind, presented by the Alabama Department of Public Health, reminding Alabama fans, don't wait, vaccinate. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield. What's on tap next for Bama? Brought to you by Bud Light, proud sponsor of Alabama Athletics. You know Bud Light, it's easy to drink, it is easy to enjoy. Well, coming up after we're done with this show in 5 minutes, make sure you find your local CTSN basketball affiliate for Crimson Tide men's basketball against McNeese. The halftime score, Alabama 41 and McNeese 30. Coming up later in the week, it'll be Alabama taking on Purdue coming up on Friday night. A long stretch away from Coleman Coliseum coming up for Nate Oates and the men's basketball team. Do want to remind you about Hey Coach coming up at 6 p.m. on Wednesday night. Chris Stewart will be joined by the head coach of the Crimson Tide, Kalen DeBoer at Baumhower's in Tuscaloosa. And then on Saturday at 10 o'clock start time for Alabama against Mercer, leading up to that 1 p.m. kickoff inside Saban Field. And as we mentioned, Cory, a good opportunity for the Crimson Tide ahead of them this week before 2 really important SEC games to close out this regular season. But if we're talking about the playoff race, this game matters just as much as what's coming up in Norman, Oklahoma, and at home against Auburn.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, every single week is you get you back against the wall, even though you just had one of the, best victories that we've had so far across college football and in our season after beating LSU like we did. It all could be for nothing if you go out there and find a way to lose these next 3 ball games, and it starts this weekend against Mercer. You got to take care of business. We've done a lot of good things. This team's continued to improve. I want to see us go out there and play some clean football. We've gotten healthy. That's the biggest thing, too, is you come off this bye week at the right time. Let's go out there and play some good football, go out there and execute, because that's what happens. If you kind of get sloppy and start losing a little bit of focus, it's easy that's when injuries happen. So we got to make sure that we're ready to go at 1 o'clock on Saturday to go take care of business.
And unfortunately, quickly, Q Robinson out for the year, announced by Coach DeBoer earlier today, and certainly that's tough news to see. Also, Keanu Cooch right behind him on the depth chart, suspended, it sounds like, for the moment. So Alabama's depth will be tested this week. Yeah, it definitely will, and you're going to see a lot more of Quay Rusall. We're out there. He's one of those guys that's really good in pass rush, and even Deontay Lawson. You can find different pass rushers, but that's a huge blow for this team to lose him. Cory, we'll talk to you on Saturday, part of our game day coverage. Roll Tide. Looking forward to it. Appreciate it. Roll Tide. That's Cory Reamer. I'm Roger Hoover. If you missed any portion of tonight's show, catch it on demand on the Alabama Insider Podcast. Download and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. That does it for Crimson Tide Rewind, presented by the Alabama Department of Public Health, live from Baumhower's Victory Grille in Vestavia Hills. For Austin Wolken, back at our Learfield studios, our engineer Todd Robbins and Cory Reamer, I'm Roger Hoover saying thanks for listening, and Roll Tide Roll.